Hi and welcome to Poly Originals with Fiona Abel-Smith. Today we're going to have fun. We're just going to make a very simple little cane. We're going to make it into gift tags and then you can write on the back of them, and if you put the date and the details down, then once they've been finished as gift tags they make useful decorations to have on a tree for instance, or just around the house. A nice simple cane this one, and this is the star cane with gift tags stroke decorations in polymer clay. The equipment we need today is fairly straightforward. I'm working on a large tile, but something like that is fine to work on. You need a sharp implement to cut down through the cane slices, so I'm using a polymer clay blade. I sometimes refer to this as a tissue blade. A craft knife always comes in handy. I've got a small roller, which we're just going to roll over to smooth any slices we add. I'm going to use this cable needle just to smooth over any joins in the clay slices, but any form of blending or smoothing tool, something along these lines, works fine. Because I'm doing mine as gift tags, I'm going to be cutting a little hole in them, so I've got one of these very small cutting tools. I'll put a link to where to get these from in the video description below. If you don't have one of those, a cocktail stick works fine, and also you could just cut off the end of a straw and that makes quite a good hole as well, or even obviously a needle, just something to make a hole through the clay. To bake on, I'm using a smaller tile, and because I don't want the back of my piece to go shiny where it touches the tile, I've just got a piece of card which I put down first, and I don't want the back to go shiny because obviously we're going to write on the back with it being a gift tag. I'm going to use some aluminium foil to tent my tile when I bake, just to avoid any spike in the oven's temperature to make sure the clay doesn't burn or get overly hot. When we're creating the cane, I'm going to use a measuring sheet just to make sure that each side is the same width, and this one is freely downloadable from www.printablepaper.net. I've done the 4 squares to an inch one. You can download it in centimetres if you prefer, and I simply laminate mine because then I can use it several times. If you want to add a little bit of decorative detail to the centre, you can use these sort of pyramid shaped on the back little diamante things called chatons in the UK, and I'll put a link to where I get mine from in the details below the video description. And to write on the back with polymer clay, Sharpie pens are good if you've got a light background, and obviously the black ones if you've got a dark background. Then some of the metallic ones, I've got a gold one, a silver one. These Pilot pens are good. The Krylon pens are good, either in gold or silver, and you can actually get some really nice metallic felt tip pens these days, and they write really nicely on the back of the polymer clay as well. Although if you're using one of these or any of these pens, check on a piece first, on a baked piece first, to check that it works okay. See whether it smudges straight away. For instance, these do, but then they dry pretty quickly, so after about half an hour they're completely dry. But just check that as well to make sure that what you're using works. Other than that, I will be using biodegradable wet wipes or wet cloths to clean my tools and my hands as I go along, and just some plain paper tissues just to dry anything off if I've wiped it. And the last thing I will be using is a pasta machine dedicated to polymer clay use. If you don't have a pasta machine, you can simply stack equal numbers of playing cards on either side of the clay you want to roll, and just use your roller over the top, and then you can get quite nice thin clay sheets doing it that way instead. So let's move on to the clay we're going to use for today's project. The clay I'm using today is the Fimo Soft, but all well-known brands of clay will work well for this technique. We're going to make 2 Skinner blends today, one in those 3 colours and one in those 3 colours. And when you're choosing your colours, you want one to have sort of fairly lightish colours and one to have slightly darker, and there should be quite a difference between your lightest and your darkests. I think this one of being sort of like a background colour, which is why I've gone for the white through to the blues, and this being the main colour band that I'm using, so this will be the brightest part. We're then going to have a bit of darker colour, or of course you could go light if you prefer, depending on what blend you've got in your colours, and this will add the dark accent into the rest of the pattern. And then the underneath, the bit that's going to be the gift tag that you're going to write on, today I'm using the white. Obviously, again, you can use whatever colour you like, but it's nice to use a colour that mixes in with all the rest. You could also, if you want to, if you don't want to use an extra bit of clay, any of the offcuts from when you've made the cane up would probably be just about enough to make a sheet to put on the underneath of your gift tag as well, so that's another option. So for the amounts and the colours I'm actually using today, we have got 7 grams or 1/4 of an ounce of these colours, and I've gone for the white, aqua, peppermint, lilac, raspberry and plum. we've got about 10 grams or 2/3 of an ounce, and that's the Windsor blue, and then half an ounce or 14 grams of white, and I say that's going to be the background. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to condition all of these colours in these separate amounts and get them all nicely conditioned. If you're unsure on conditioning polymer clay, I do have a few tips and techniques in a video that I've done, and I'll put a link to that in the details below this video. These I'm going to put through on setting number 3 of my pasta machine, which is a medium setting to create little sort of roughly rectangular sheets. And on my pasta machine, 0 is thick and 9 is thin. The blue I'm going to roll into a log, and the white I'm going to put through on a thinner setting, so that will be setting number 6 on my pasta machine. And I'll bring you back when I've got those all conditioned. So there's all the clay done. As I say, these went through on setting number 3, this on setting number 6, and this has gone into a log. So these two I'm going to put on one side for now. As I mentioned, we're going to make a skinner blend with those 3 and a skinner blend with those 3, so I'm going to start with this one. If you're unsure how to do a skinner blend, I do have a video with a few tips and techniques, and I will put a link to that in the video description below. So putting them together, so you've got the white, then the medium colour, then the darker colour, you're going to cut diagonally through the 2 end pieces, straight down the middle piece. Put the 2 diagonals on top of each other, that one straight, and then put them together so that you're joining down that diagonal line. So you've got the big bit here, big bit here. You can either press them down flat with your fingers or give a slight roll with a clean roller, and then pull that up. Put a slight pinch where you've done the fold, because I'm going to put this back through the pasta machine. I always add any little bits of clay that I've got stuck on the thing back into the piece, and then we're going to put it back through the pasta machine, fold first, and I'm going to put it through on a setting thicker, so setting number 2 on my pasta machine, because we've got 4 layers of clay there. Each time I put it through, I'll collect it as it comes through, and I'll fold bottom to top, and we'll keep doing that till we get a nice blend through from one side to the other. Once you've got your nice blend, I'm just going to chop it in 2. Put the 2 pieces on top of each other, press the ends together and put it back through the pasta machine on setting number 2, holding onto these 2 pieces to make sure they don't spread apart as they come out. I'm now going to put it back through the pasta machine, the darker end first, and I'm going to put it through my thinnest setting on my pasta machine, because I want the longest, thinnest strip that I can get. If you know that your pasta machine shreds your clay, then simply move down 1 step at a time till you get to your thinnest usable setting. So I'll bring you back when I've got that done. So we end up with a nice long thin strip. I'm not overly worried about any little bits of dirt that are on the end of it. They'll all come out when you sort of start putting it together as a cane. And all I'm going to do now is I'm going to concertina it backwards and forwards. So it's about 1/2 inch, just over sort of about 1¼ centimetres backwards and forwards. Try and make sure as you're doing it you don't have too much trapped air in the folds, and go all the way through from one end to the other. Once you've got it done, we're just going to neaten it, because obviously that's not very straight. So firstly by pressing down, by pulling down the ends, and just pushing in and pressing down to make it as neat as you can. If it does annoy you that you've got a bit of dark on there, you can always just flick it off with your craft knife. And for this amount of clay, we'll do it, it's about 2 inches or 5 centimetres in length, and probably about 3/4 inch, about 1.5 centimetres, sort of along that way. So having done the one, we're going to do exactly the same with our next set of colours. Again, diagonally through the end ones, straight down the middle, put them together and do everything to get them back to this stage. And you should end up with 2 pieces roughly the same. And all we're going to do with these is we're going to chop them into 4 pieces down that way. If you can, try and make your pieces from top to bottom as even as they can. It really doesn't matter if one of these is thin and the next one's slightly larger, so don't worry about that side too much. So you can either do 1, 2, 3, 4, do it that way, or if you prefer, you can chop down the middle and then chop this one into 2 halves, whichever way you want to do it. But as I say, it really doesn't matter if these are uneven, and you can see there, that's a lot thicker than that one. Having the unevenness actually adds a little bit of extra something into the pattern, so really don't worry about it. We are now going to stand them up like that. I'm going to take the one I consider as being my main colour, this purple-pink Skinner blend. I'm going to take a piece of the purple, a piece of the blue, and the lighter end of that I'm going to put towards the darker end of that one, and I'm going to stick those two next to that one like that. So that's at right angles, but the lighter end towards there. Put your next 2 pieces together so that they're also light to dark, and then always putting the blue next to the pink. So dark there, but this light part goes in towards there. Same again for that one, blue always in, light out. So effectively you're making like a zigzag pattern up the middle with the blue in between, and your last bit of blue goes there. So all the lights going towards the middle and all the darks are going towards the middle. You can then get your lump of clay, roll it to roughly the same height as your cane, and press it into a triangle. I'm doing that just by creating a shape with my fingers and pressing down into the middle of this. That should fit in the middle there. Don't worry too much about neatness. Having slight differences here will just make the pattern slightly different, and that's fine because you'll come up with your own unique pattern. So I'm just pressing that in, and we now effectively have a roughly triangular shape. So I'm just going to force that down and force it more into triangle by pressing down with my fingers, forcing a point and elongating it as we go. So just by pressing in, I'll keep my fingers on the ends to make sure the ends stay nice and neat, and we'll make it longer as we go along. And we don't want it too long because we're going to cut this in half and put the 2 halves together. So something about 3 inches, 7.5 centimetres is perfect. And we've got it roughly there. Just check, you want it to be more or less even along both sides, and then chop down the middle. And we're going to put it together so that those bits join in the middle. And I've got the dark to the outside. Now obviously you can put it together the other way, you'll get a different pattern, so if you like this one, just experiment and do it different ways and see how the patterns look different each time you do it. The next thing we need to do is force this back into a triangular cane. Now I like it where these bits are on the outside points of the triangle, so this needs to go flat, but again you could do it the other way around so this goes flat. So just have an experiment and see what you want to do. But for me today, because those bits are going to be the triangle, I'm going to put it face down onto the towel like that, and holding onto the top, just gently push down on either side. See, it's starting to go. And gradually turn it around, do it the other way. You can push down until you've got the bottom bit virtually flat. Once you've done that, it's just a case of reducing the cane, and by that I'm pressing in whilst pulling it slightly longer until we end up with a nice equilateral triangle, and by that I mean each side is the same, and each side will measure about 1 inch or 2.5 centimetres across, because for me that gives a nice size for doing the gift tags, enough room to write the message on, and then obviously the tag itself is big enough to make a nice tree decoration or festive hanging or whatever you want to do with it afterwards. So I'll carry on reducing this and I'll probably fast forward through so you don't have to sit and watch the whole process, but it shouldn't take too long, only a few minutes to reduce this down to size. And when I'm pressing in, if you notice, I'm really pressing in mainly along the bottom, and that way you avoid having the middle parts of your triangular cane curving inwards, because I am not using my fingers on that part. But as it gets smaller, so you will find that just pressing in on the bottom does actually mean you're working halfway up each time you go through the cane. Every so often rotate it and just keep working on. Okay, so I've really paid attention to the size of each of my sides to make sure that they are exactly the same, and this does make a difference in this one because we're creating the star shape. In actual fact, your pattern can be whatever it likes and can be as messy as you like, as long as you get this triangular shape correct. So what we'll do is we'll cut off the end, and you normally get a fair bit of wastage, but we'll just have a look through see what we've got. Actually, that's fine, I could have probably chopped off less, but this is the first time we'll get to see what the pattern's going to look like when you put the two pieces together. And that's how it's going to go. And what we need to do now is to cut 12 slices. So if you had yours nicely placed, I would suggest you leave it in place. I did that obviously just to show you what the pattern's going to look like. And then with your blade, carefully take 12 slices. It doesn't matter how thick they are as long as they're all consistent. And because we're going to put these on a backing sheet of clay, they can be thin if you want to. Having cut your slices, get your piece of white clay. Now, it's one of the laws of the pasta machine that whenever you're using white clay, you always get some marks. So whatever is your cleanest side, put the cleanest side down on your nice clean measuring sheet, or tile if you're working on that. And if you wanted to, you could work directly on the tile if you weren't worried about having the shiny bit on the underneath. Then carefully with your slices, peel two off and start fitting them together in a way that the patterns match. If you can, have a look and see if there is a tell, and by that I mean somewhere where the pattern is slightly different from one piece to the next. And for me, my tell, can you see here, this piece stretches out long and thin, this piece is much shorter, so I know long and thin needs to match with long and thin. Short piece needs to match with a short piece. And I will do 3 pieces at a time, put them down in the middle of my piece of clay with the blunt side of my blade, just straighten them up slightly, and then do the reverse on the others, bearing in mind that this side will need to be that long piece when it matches, and then you put the rest together. This time I'll straighten it up off the clay. And one of the reasons I like doing it on these sheets is you can bend the sheet to fit your pieces nicely in together. At this stage, again with the blunt side of the blade, keep my fingers well away from the sharp side, I will gently straighten off the edges. And the great thing about the hexagons is you know that this side should be parallel to this side, that one to that one, that one to that one. And all I need to do now is add the extra 6 on the outside. And again, I will use square bit, so I know that piece goes on that way. Long bit, so that piece goes on that way. And just carry on doing that all the way around. So there's the pattern starting to come through, and now we're just going to knead it up a little. And this is where I use the blending tool or your smoothing tool, and for me I use a cable needle, so I use that part, and where we have all those joins I will just gently smooth over from one side to the other going all the way around till we smooth over where all the pieces join together. If you've still got some bits that look uneven, then with a nice clean rolling pin, we're going to roll from the outward part of the star towards the middle only, and we're not going to press too hard at this end because you don't want to press that star shape down, but you can press harder once you start to go to the middle, because it's these bits really that we're starting to roll to get nice and neat. And you'll notice that I turn my sheet round each time I do it. You can also roll across the middle bits till you've got it nice and neat. I will then, again with the blunt side of my tissue blade, not the sharp one, I will go in and I will just press and neaten up the outside parts to make sure we've got nice straight lines going down here. And then going back the other direction. Just spend a bit of time making sure it's as neat as you want it to be. And then once you're happy, either with the tissue blade or with your craft knife, just chop down. So I use the blade because I find it easy because it's obviously a straight line already. But as I say, use whatever you prefer. Peel away the excess clay. Take whatever you're going to use to make your hole. For me, I'm going to use one of these little things. Find somewhere to put the hole. Leave enough clay on the outside so that when you put a ribbon or something through, it's not going to make the clay break. And then if your centre isn't quite as neat as you would like, and if you have one, just create a tiny little indent and pop in one of the little sparkles. If you've got the stick-on kind, obviously you can just stick those on afterwards. Then you can just pop it out with a pin or something once it's baked, and then pop a bit of glue back in after it's baked just to set it in to make sure it's absolutely permanent. And all I'm going to do then is just carefully remove it from the sheet, get my tile, pop that down, make sure it's nice and flat. And as I say, I always tent my pieces in foil to protect them should the oven spike in temperature whilst it's baking, and I will bake that according to the manufacturer's instructions for the brand of clay I am using. So there we are, all out of the oven, finished baking, and there is our star gift tag. And you write on it on the back. So obviously I've just put Happy Christmas, haven't put the name of the person yet. And then after it's been finished used as a gift tag, it'll make a nice decoration, either to hang on a tree or just somewhere around the house as a memory. When we put that one together, we put it together so that when we put the canes together, the dark was on the inside. Of course, you can put it together so the light side is on the inside. And if you do that, you get this pattern, which I think is quite nice as well. And then just to show you how the whole thing would kaleidoscope, and if you put lots of pieces of the cane together, in fact 24 pieces of the triangular cane, put them together to create a hexagon, this is the pattern that it creates for those of you who'd like to do something else with a veneer. Here are some other colour options for you, and as you can see they look slightly different depending on the tones. So in this one, as I mentioned, we very much had the light and the dark colours. In this one, although we've got quite a nice variety of colours, there's not so much tonal difference. We have got the nice lights. We had white, lemon yellow and gold for our background 3 Skinner blend, but then in the other one I went for the purple, the Indian red and the tangerine, and the purple is not quite so dark as the plum was obviously in this one, so you get a different sort of feel, more of a set block pattern in that one. And then black for the dark colour rather than the Windsor blue I used in this one. This one I also used black, but in this one I used the same as we got for the inside here, so the white, the aqua and the peppermint. And then for the darker colour I used gold, apple green and then emerald green, and that again gives you quite a nice tracery pattern in that one. So there you go. There are 3 colour options for you, plus the other ways of doing the cane. And for the amount of cane that we made today, I can generally get about 4 stars, so 4 gift tags out of the canes we used. But obviously, if you cut your slices thicker, then you may not have so many, and if you cut them really thin, you can get even more. Well, that's it for today's tutorial. I really hope you enjoyed that one. Thank you as always for joining me, and a special thank you to those of you who do and have subscribed. I really do appreciate it. This is a quick, fun and simple one, but can create lasting memories for this year and for other years. That's it for now. Hopefully I'll see you next time. Bye.